Kip, what's up, man? It's good to see you. It's been weeks since we did one of these together. So it's good to have my co-host back. It's good to be back. And here we go.
Yeah, I love it, man. And it does need to be said. I always appreciate these conversations, and it's always better when we have a chance to do them together. And of course, we got some great questions from the guys in the Foundry, which is our members of the Iron Council. So we got some good ones to go over.
Is it weird for you to do it by yourself? Does it feel like pretentious, or you're talking to yourself in the mirror, or like, what does it feel like for you? Because I've been doing it so long that I don't even feel like at this point I'm talking to myself. So I'm just curious about what it is for you.
Yeah, it used to, I used to feel really awkward about it. Due to your coaching, I just hit record and go. And I try not to like analyze like, oh, should I have said that differently? And maybe I should hit pause and restart over. And I did that for a while. Like I was tempted to do that, but no, I just go and record it and have a conversation with myself. And it doesn't feel like I'm having a conversation with myself though, but I am.
Somebody had made a comment that the best part of your podcast was listening to you tell dad jokes and then laugh at them yourself.
I know. Totally. That's how you know it's a good dad joke, when you laugh at yourself. And no one needs to be part of the joke for you to enjoy it. But and I did get some messages, by the way. Guys are like, hey, don't let Ryan give you shit about telling dad jokes. Those were hilarious. And I was like, I better check up on the last AMA. And of course, you started off with giving me shit for doing that dad joke. So
I wasn't giving you shit at all, man. I'm just telling you the feedback I received. So it is good to do this together. Funny. But you know, there's also a life lesson in here with just starting, because I think so many of us want things to be exactly perfect, exactly right. I don't know if that was good. I don't know how people are going to respond. What if they judge me? What if this? What if that?
Yeah.
I just believe that you ought to launch the product, whatever it is, knowing with certainty that it is not going to be perfect, that there are going to be critics, there are going to be people who hold you back or want to tear you down, and just deal with it. So you could have it perfect and never launch, or you could have it 80%-ish and launch it. And that's how you grow. That's how you get better. That's how you improve. And I'm not saying just because you launch that you shouldn't go back and critique and evaluate your performance. I don't know if you do that. I do that. And my wife makes fun of me. She says, you listen to your own podcast? I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm listening because I'm trying to figure out if I could have done it better, what question I missed, or what point that I made that wasn't something I totally believe, or, just trying to improve. And then you get better because you put it out there, and there's some real world consequence to what you're putting out there, and you want to improve. But if you're never launching, there's no feedback for you ever. And you're not going to improve because you never launched the dang thing.
Yeah. Not that you need more, people telling you how great you are, but you are so good at, you are so good at this. And for those guys that have a hard time relating, I'm the opposite. Right? I have a tendency, my natural tendency is, Ryan, if it's not perfect, then don't do it, and delay it and overanalyze it and everything. And you're just spot on. Like, I have to fight against that a lot to go, no, let's just get started and start making progress. And to your point, you don't know what you don't know. And there's an element of knowledge that's not even on your radar. You can analyze shit all you want. You don't even know about it. And that's not going to show up for you until you take action. And that's something that you've been like a really great example around. And hopefully that's been rubbing off in the different areas of my life. So,
yeah, I think that's a personality thing to a large extent, and that has always been my personality, of just go and figure it out along the way, to my detriment in some cases. I'm willing to admit that I've spent money and energy and time and relationships where I've alienated, I've ostracized, I've struggled, because I do tend to at times leave a wake of collateral damage in my path. And so that's the risk of taking it too far to the extreme with what I've been talking about, so your blessing can be your curse, and your curse can be your blessing if you understand the context in which you should operate.
Well, and I think the solution to that is something that we talk about on this podcast all the time. And it's an after action review. It's just like you listening to the podcast when you run solo. Why do you do that? So you can pivot and adjust. You do an AAR when you rush an MVP or whatever. Why do you do that? So you learn that, oh shit, man, I sometimes leave collateral damage. Sometimes I do this and I do AAR. So that way I realize like, oh, I've had this brilliant idea and I don't act on shit because I overanalyzed it. And by now I could have tried things out. I could have learned. So it's the constant after action review, assessing what works, what doesn't work. And regardless of your natural tendencies, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, of course. And that's why we do those after action reviews so frequently. That's why we built it into the program. But a lot of guys just don't do it. They don't even think about it. And I didn't for a long time either. I just go about my business and it worked or it didn't. And I never evaluate whether it worked or how it failed or what specifically went well, what didn't go so well. And the challenge is you can actually achieve success without doing that. But some people would say, no, it's a good thing. No, that's not a good thing. That's the reason it's not good is because, as the saying goes, even the, most unlucky get right twice a day or whatever, right? If you're telling the time, right? It's like that. You can't replicate it. That's the problem. I don't want a one-time success. I think about this in this context of sports. You look at like Tony Gwynn or Ted Williams, some of the greatest baseball hitters specifically of all time, because they're consistent. It's not because they hit the most home runs. It's because they got on base significantly more than any other player in the history of the game. And that's what I'm trying to do is like, no, get on base every time you go up to bat and learn how to get on base, learn how to replicate that. And granted, occasionally you'll hit a home run and we'll take it. We like the home runs. We like the grand slams. But I want the base hits. I want the doubles all day long. And then the occasional home run sprinkled in. But if I'm swinging for the fences, the odds of that working out are significantly lower than just hitting.
Yeah, that's not going to be as successful. Yeah.
Just have a good swing the bat with the fundamentals and get on base as often as you can. Everything else will take care of itself if you evaluate it, to your point earlier.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, let's get to some questions.
Should we jump into it? Yeah, so we're going to field questions, like I mentioned, from the Iron Council to learn more about the IC and to be maybe sign up to be notified of the next time we open up membership. Go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. First question, Caddy. Sorry, Bobby. What's your battle plan this quarter? We don't hear much about what you guys are doing, what you guys are crushing every day. So Bobby wants to hear about what our battle plans are for this quarter.
Yeah, I mean, do you have some? I don't know that we need to get into all of them because that would take a long time. But do you want to either go through your vision or your quadrants, or you want to go through an element of that?
Yeah, I'll share objective. One objective I have is, and I don't know where I picked this up, but it feels like I'm always flooding in data from places. And then I feel bad because I never give credit to where I got it from. So it may have come from you, Ryan, or a book or something, but just the power of presence has been really present on my mind of late. And that for me to take advantage of opportunities in my life, it's all about killing it with what's on my lap, what I have available to me right now. And that has been very on my mind a lot around my family. Me killing it as a husband and a dad has to do with my presence, period. And not just like being, we talked about this, it's being fully present with my kids, with my spouse and everything. And so my objective this quarter is to increase my effectiveness in the household. And that tactic is really around no social media after I get home. So I'm turning off social media and I'm putting my phone away, putting work away, and I'm just engulfing myself with my children and my spouse appropriately.
So, nice. Yeah, I like that. I've got a couple different, obviously we cover 4 objectives. I can cover a couple here. Contribution, which is giving back, investing. It pertains to becoming a man of value. What I've been really focused on over the past, I would say even 6 months, and more so as we move into the next quarter, is bringing in the right team around me. So I've really spent a lot of time thinking about who is in the right place, who isn't in the right place, what other resources and assets do I need to bring in, what do I need to invest in to take this podcast and movement to the next level. So in the past couple of weeks, I've had somebody working with us. I brought her on even more so. We ramped up what she's going to be doing, and of course the compensation that comes with it. We're really trying to build out. This is big for me right now. And this is what I'll be moving in a quarter two, is our media team, making sure that we have social media covered, making sure that we have the video production covered, making sure that all the editing, like Chad Robeson takes care of that, locked in and dialed in. And then we're going to be introducing a new segment to what we're doing. And I haven't decided on what it's going to be, but I'm thinking something like spotlights. So this past week, I went and met with Ethan Suplee, Dave Rubin, Vic Blends, and then Michael Chandler. And Michael Chandler has a fight coming up next month. So we went down to where he trains, and we recorded some of his training, what he's doing.
Yeah.
Him and I actually got to train a little bit one-on-one.
Super cool. Really cool. Yeah. You're like, no striking, bro. Let's just roll.
Yeah. I told him, I texted him, I said, hey man, like when we're down there, I want to train with you. And I think initially he didn't respond back to that element of it, because we talked, and I'm like, maybe he doesn't, because he's, training for a fight. Like, I don't want to hurt him. Not that I could hurt him, but I don't want to do something stupid. It's so easy to get hurt. Right.
Well, and let's be honest, like we even see this in Origins, like guys like, oh, Ryan Mickler, I want to roll with you. Right. Like there's a little bit of this targetness, and let's be frank. What are we doing? We're seeing how good we are. Like most of those guys aren't like actively going, hey, I want to roll with you to fill your style. It's
of course.
I want to roll and see if I'm better than you. Right. And so Chandler probably has to, I don't know. I think so. And
I think you're right. I didn't have that mentality at all.
Well, I don't think you do, but he has to be concerned of that kind of guy going, hey, what's train Chandler,
Completely. So I messaged him because my intention was not, I want to know how good I am. I actually went in there like, I want to know what it's like to roll with you.
Totally. Yeah.
I want to know what it's like to roll with somebody who's elite level. Like, how much better are you than the other people I try? Like, that's the mentality I went into it with.
Yeah. It'd be an honor to get smashed by him. You know what I mean?
Completely.
The whole time you'd be like, yes, this is awesome.
Yeah. So I messaged him back and forth, and I'm like, hey, look, bro, I get it. If you don't want to train, I get it. You got a fight coming up. I won't be a spaz. Like I'll be controlled, because it's the spazoids who get you in trouble. It's not the guys who've been in it for a long time.
Yeah. It's the unpredictable guy that gets you hurt. Yeah.
And so I said, I'll be controlled. Like we'll go smooth or whatever. And I was teasing him, because when I met with him, I'm like, man, because eventually he said, yeah, let's do it. We'll go slow. We'll roll. We'll do some wrestling, jujitsu, but we'll do it slow, smooth. I'm like, cool, no problem. So we didn't even go, we don't go 100%. And it was funny, because I messaged him, when we were talking, I said, I'm glad you accepted my request. And he's like, oh, really? Why is that? And I said, because I had it on a text thread that if you turned down me training with you, I was going to blast it out to the world and say, Mike Chandler didn't accept my request to go fight him. He just laughed.
Yeah. Dodged me. Yeah. He dodged me. Yeah,
exactly. But no, it was cool. And so the reason I brought that up is we're going to do these short spotlight segments where there's a lot of video footage of Chandler training, what his regimen is, and that sort of thing. And then we sat down for 15 minutes or so in front of his octagon at his cage at his training center. And we just talked like we were old buddies. So we did that with him. We did that with Ethan Suplee. It was awesome, man. It was so cool. So anyways, that's what I'm focusing on contribution. Condition is really trying to dial in my body fat. I've been training a lot with jujitsu. I've been lifting, and I feel bigger and stronger, but to be frank, my diet is horrendous. Like and I've been traveling a lot, and I'm not trying to use that as an excuse. I'm just trying to say that's a reason for my horrendous diet, but just with added weight and body fat percent, like I really got to lock that in. So I'm going to be hiring a nutritionist. I've got a couple of conversations this week, in fact, for that. So that's condition. And then with connection, which is the relationship component, it's building out high caliber relationships with guests that I want to have on. So that the tactics around that are reaching out to high caliber people, reaching out to those individuals we've had on the podcast and asking for recommendations. We've been hyper focused on who we want to have on the podcast. In fact, hold on one second. Nobody knows about this yet, but I think it's either next week or the week after. This is the individual we have coming on the podcast.
Hell
Mr.
yeah.
Terry Crews, man, is coming on the podcast. So he just sent me the book and he's coming on. So we're ramping this up. Like, we're taking this thing to the next level. And so the connection quadrant is revolved around bringing the right people onto the podcast who have a message, maybe a different message we haven't heard before, a different perspective. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff.
So I know this is not the question by Bobby, but I'm sure everyone listening is kind of, wants a little clarity on the spotlight. Is the objective there really is to drive inspiration, right? That I can watch this 5-minute video on Chandler about how he's showing up as a man and really be able to relate to that. Like, I mean, let's be frank, that's what the podcast interview is, right? It's a conversational version. And is this a video version of that with the intent that we're driving knowledge and inspiration from these individuals that you choose to spotlight? Is that the idea?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I want guys to be motivated and inspired by the guys they're hearing from and learning from, but I also want to see, I personally want to see these guys in their element. And I think the people who are listening, although they may not have an opportunity to go train with Michael Chandler or lift with Ethan Suplee, or go build knives with Josh Smith, or shoot archery with John Dudley or Jack Carr, that they can still get an element of that, a piece of what that would be like. So from a consumer standpoint, I want the men who are listening to be able to tap into a 10 to 15 minute segment and feel motivated and inspired, like, by some elite people in their chosen field. But then from a business standpoint, I want to be very clear about this too, is we do hour-plus long conversations with our podcast guests. And so there's going to be a subset of people who are going to listen to an hour plus. And there's going to be other people who are like, I don't have an hour, but I have 15 minutes. And so if we can give them a bite-sized segment in a different format, a different feel, something that's more conversational, like you'd be either a fly on the wall or you're actually sitting in the room with these guys, then that's what I want to make is available to hit everybody, to give everybody what it is they might be looking for specifically.
Got it. Cool, man. I'm excited for that. That's
awesome. It's going to be cool. It's going to be really cool.
Super cool. All right, Greg Ray, how do you go about finding the right business coach / mentor, and what should you expect from the process? So finding a good coach and mentor, recommendations.
The first thing you need to do in finding a mentor is know what you want. Specifically. Because if you said, well, I just want to learn how to grow my business. Wrong answer. I just want to get in shape. Wrong answer. Like, I just want to make more money. Wrong answer. Like, what do you mean? Now, if we take getting in shape, for example, and you said, well, Ryan, I really want to, I want to run a marathon. Okay. Now we're getting specific. Right. Or if you said, instead of I want to start a business, you say, I want to start a podcast centered around X, Y, and Z, and I want to know how best to do that. That's a better answer.
Got it.
So the first thing you need to do is and I know what Greg does. Greg puts together, does long range firearms schools and instruction. And he does hunting. He puts together hunting programs for guys who have been hunting for a while and guys who have never hunted at all, and teaches them how to zero in and sight in their rifles, how to go out and shoot pigs or bears or deer or elk or whatever they're doing, and then break the animal down, learn how to process it effectively, and then actually prepare meals with the meat that you just procured. So when you're thinking about mentorship, there's a lot of aspects of your life that it could be. And what you want is you want a specialist. I don't know that I totally subscribe to the idea of I'm a life coach. I don't know what that means. I don't, like broadly and generally. I mean, maybe a therapist would be helpful for that because they can work you through some things. But when you just say you're a life coach, what are you talking about? Like you're talking about planning out my day. You're talking about feeling better. You're talking about efficiencies in my business. What specifically you're talking about? So what I'm going to look for when I look for mentors is, okay, I want to grow the video production quality of our business. Okay. And that's going to lead to a lot of different things, but because I'm hyper specific about that, I can actually go out and target individuals who either, and here's the second answer to that question, who either are doing it themselves. Okay. So if I wanted to learn to get better at jujitsu, I'm not going to reach out to a white belt. I'm going to reach out to a black belt. And actually, I'm not going to reach out to a black belt that doesn't, like, ideally, I would find a black belt who has the same style and body type as me.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Because that, like, Kip, you and I train jujitsu completely different. Like, if you're telling me I got to flip around and I got to like do backflips and stretch my legs into positions they don't belong, I think it's awesome. I'm not going to do that. But if you're like, hey, let me teach you how to smash past people effectively and just tweak these few things about your game. Let me take you as a big bodied guy, a big framed, I should say.
Yeah.
And your game's going to be a little slower, a little more methodical, a little more physical than your game is, Kip. Like, I want to learn from that guy because he knows how to do it with my body type and what's good for me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you want to learn from somebody else, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. But I think your analogy is perfect in the sense of it needs to be specialist in regards to whatever it is that you're specifically looking for.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So the second part of that, I said, either find somebody who's doing it themselves to the degree that you want to do it, and, or they have a track record of doing it for somebody else. So the example I would use in that scenario is Tim Grover, world-class athletic coach, coached Michael Jordan, coached
Kobe Bryant,
Dwayne Wade, I believe. Like, he's coached these miraculous, these amazing some of the greatest the greatest basketball players of all time.
Yeah.
Can he play basketball as well as Michael Jordan? No way. Not a chance in hell. With all due respect to Tim. No. Yep. Because it's a different skill set. He doesn't need to know how to play basketball as well as Michael Jordan to be able to coach Michael. It's a different skill set. So you need either to find somebody who's either producing it for themselves or they have a track record of producing it for other people.
Yep.
And if you can have those couple of things, you know exactly what you want. You have somebody who's producing it for themselves and or for other people. And then the third part of that question is what to expect. That's what you need to talk with them about. I'm not going to tell you, but you need to say, hey, what can I expect? What results can I expect to see? How long is this going to take? When things aren't going right, what are you going to tell me? How are you going to keep me on the path? What do you expect from me? How often do I need to check in with you? So I'm not going to answer that question specifically, but what I will tell you is you need to ask really good questions about how this process will go, about what their expectations are for them and what they have for you, and decide if that's a fit or not. That's where the interviewing comes into play.
Yeah, that's great, Ryan, because I was going to ask like how much you would evaluate style into this, because as I've looked and thought about like a coach and a mentor, you know, some individuals come to mind. I'm like, oh, he would be a great mentor, but I'm like, but he's going to tell me what I want to hear. And I don't want someone that will tell me what I want to hear. I want someone to call me out when I'm acting like a bitch. Does it make sense? And yes, be a little bit more hard-nosed with me, not someone that's a little bit like, oh, you're doing great. And you know what I mean? Like I want the opposite type of style, if that makes sense. And I think that would be covered in those expectations of how's the conversation going to go, Ryan, when it goes south and I'm not doing what you expect me to do. Like, what does that look like typically?
Right.
And understanding those specific expectations.
So last night, my wife and I watched Hoarders. Have you ever seen that show? Hoarders?
Quarters?
Hoarders.
Hoarders, no.
Okay. Well, you guys all know what it is. People who hoard and teach them how to get rid of that pattern of whatever they're doing. Anyways.
It's like to coach people that get them to stop being hoarders. Is that the idea?
It's to coach them, and then it's to clean up their mess. Cause a lot of cases, their houses are condemned by the city and they're having like violations and there's health issues. So I'm watching the show last night, and one of the guys is I think he said clinically licensed hoarding specialist therapist or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Like that's a specific skill set, I'm sure. And the amount of patience this man had was unbelievable. I'd be like, what? I couldn't do it. So kudos to him. But when the hoarder lady was talking, he was like, how does that make you feel? And what do you feel about that? And how do you process that? And I'm thinking in that situation, it's probably right. But if anybody said that to me, I'd be like, F off. Like, I don't need that. Like, I need you to tell me what's wrong or what's right and how I can do it better.
Yeah. Don't
I don't need this fluffy fairy tale bullshit. Again, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm really not. I'm saying for my personality, like, I don't want you to be like, how does it make, I'm pissed, obviously. So what do we do about it? That's what I want to know. And that's a different style, So the style, to your point, is an important consideration.
Yeah. Ian Beck, I have just accepted a new job as a training and development manager at my work, which is in manufacturing. Do you have any advice in my new career path? I originally was the fabrication supervisor, so I know the product very well, but not so much about individual development and designing a program.
Okay, so the first question he asked, I was actually going to hit on the second question he asked, which is, do you have any advice? Not a great question. This is really not.
Yeah.
Any advice about what, right? But then he got more specific, and so he hit on that. I just want to reiterate and hash on that, as I have in the past. The more specific you can get with your line of questioning, the more specific your answers will be. So he said he's not great at the product development stuff. Did I hear that right?
Learning and development, right? So he's a supervisor. He understands their product really well, but now he's in a position to provide training and development to other employees.
Got it.
And he's looking for advice in that space.
So there's a book called E-Myth that I really like that hits on this.
Great book.
And a lot of the times what ends up happening when you're really good at your job is you get promoted to lead other people, but the leadership component is different than the technical application of installing a roof, for example. Now you got to lead people to get them into install roofs. And just because you were good at putting roofs on houses doesn't mean that you're going to be good at teaching other people how to do that effectively. So I think we're running into that a little bit. So read E-Myth. That's a great book. The other thing is, I would say more of a soft skill that would be valuable to learn is just to listen without interjecting. And so Kip, we're just installing roofs, because that's the analogy I was going with. I'm a great roof installer. You're a good roof installer. Maybe you're just getting started, and I'm elevated to the position of leadership. I don't really need to go to you and teach you like all the inner workings and ins and outs of installing a roof. I mean, obviously that's important. Let's not dismiss that. Like, I do need to teach you the technical
There's some baseline knowledge you need to know. Yeah.
But as a supervisor, actually what I should be doing is asking you questions like, hey, Kip, why are you here? What's your goal for being here? Why do you like this work? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? When you leave, like, and you check out at the end of the day, how do you measure what was a good day? How do you measure what was a bad day? Tell me about your last boss. How was he or she? Were they a good employer? Were they a bad employer? What made them good? What made them bad? What did you like? What didn't you like? When were you the happiest? You see, these are the kind of questions that I wish more leaders would ask of we'll just call them subordinates, their employees, whatever. Because then you start to know what makes you, Kip, tick. And if I know what makes you tick, like, hey, Ryan, I take value in seeing this house built and knowing that there's a family under here and they're happy and that I'm doing work. I really like working with my hands. It's really important to me that I'm capable. And I start hearing this kind of stuff from you, then the way that I talk with you is going to revolve around that. Like, hey, Kip takes pride and satisfaction in a job well done, in being capable, in seeing a family that's happy with his work. He takes pride in his work. And somebody else, quite honestly, might say, you know what? Like, I just needed a job and I couldn't get hired anywhere else. And these guys gave me a chance and I just want to prove I can do it. And that's not wrong. Nothing wrong with that. But you're going to talk to that person differently than I'm going to talk with you. So the more that you can understand what people's motives and intentions and personalities and desires are, yeah, the roof stuff, sure. Yeah, you got to teach them that stuff. But outside of that, it's the deeper things that are really going to make a difference for you as a leader and how you're going to be able to motivate and inspire your team. Because what I need to tell you to get motivated might be, hey, Kip, look, this rivet on this roof is not straight. Like, I know you take pride in what you do and it's really important to you. So we're going to have to redo this because we want to make it look perfect. Right. And then Joe, I might say, hey, Joe, I know you want to get out of here to be with your family. I know your family's really important and you want to clock out right at time. So what that means is we got to do it right the first time. So we don't have to spend any extra time here than necessary. Two completely different ways to approach it, both equally important depending on who you're talking with.
Yeah. I call this your employee love language. And if you guys just search like intrinsic motivators, you'll learn that it's drastically different for everybody. In fact, we were having this conversation in our leadership team here. No employee ever leaves a company because they're going to get paid more somewhere else. It's usually a combination of these other intrinsic motivators that they're checking out. Does it make sense? And then that's more appealing. And usually salary is not a high intrinsic motivator. It's usually a feeling of fulfillment in my job or being recognized for a job well done. It's usually these other things. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not enough, right? You can't pay someone shit and be out of alignment with that,
right?
Because eventually it's just not going to jive for them. But to keep someone committed and bought in and excited about their job, you got to know that corporate love language, whatever that is. And those are typically called intrinsic motivators. So,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So
if you don't mind me adding a couple more things go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying there's a lot of good information. Sounds like you might have some. Go for it.
Yeah. So Ian, from a learning and development perspective, like when I think about like training people, I would start looking at how universities and schools are failed in training people. If you search a concept called Bloom's taxonomy, it's a hierarchy by which people learn. The lowest level of that is my ability to regurgitate information. That's not what you want your employees to be able to do. That is worthless in the workplace, right? My ability to recite on how to put shingles on a roof, but being unable to actually do it does not provide me good learning and development, right? For a roofing company. So you got to move
right,
up
but
you still
do need to know how to put a shingle on a roof. Like there is some information, but that's baseline is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, baseline is my ability to share what I memorized with you. That doesn't mean I know how to do it, right? Those are two different things. And so I would really focus on this concept of action learning. How do you get people to learn and apply it immediately? And I can't, man, this gets me all riled up when I start thinking about this. But the idea of you putting someone through a formalized training process that's like 8 weeks long, and then at the end of their training, all of a sudden they're going to remember shit that you taught them 8 weeks earlier is not an effective way to do things, right? Action learning implies that when I give you content, you need to be able to relate it directly to a scenario and apply it immediately. When you do that, you'll retain it. So how do you get these guys to do their learning as part of their action and not necessarily give them a brain dump of a ton of content and then throw them into the workforce and expect them to be able to like remember what you showed them 8 weeks earlier? So
can I give you an example of that?
Yeah, for sure.
My wife, I've been teasing her about it. Her and a good friend of hers signed up for a fly fishing course and up here in Maine. And I was like, wait, you're going to go fly fishing in Maine? Like everything's still frozen. And I'm like, how are you going to do that?
How are you going to, yeah.
And she was like, oh no, we're going to a class to learn about fly fishing. And I was like, wait, you're going. so you're going to a fly fishing class, but you're not going to fly fish. And she's like, no, they're going to teach us how to fly fish. I'm like, don't you think a better place to do that would be on the river or on the, like, I mean, yes, you need to know how to tie a fly for sure. Or you need to know how to cast at 210, but it's not brain surgery. I don't understand. She's like, well, we go to this and then a couple months, then we do our second class, which is out in the field. I'm like, that's wrong. That's 100% wrong. Who would do that? Honestly, I need to look this guy up. And if you're listening, you and I need to have a conversation about this. Yeah. Like you're going to take people out of the great outdoors, which is part of actually the only reason you'd be out fly fishing. And you're going to pull them into a classroom to teach them 210, to teach them a basic knot for tying a fly to your line. Like you're doing a huge disservice to your people. Yeah. Go out, teach them one knot, the only knot they need to know. That's going to take you 15 minutes. Then have them tie it onto their pole. You go and check it. And then when you're done with that, teach them the 2 to 10 method or like whatever your method is.
Yeah.
And then have them go catch a freaking fish.
Yeah. Here's a perfect example. So they're going to sit in a classroom, and I don't know if this is true, but I'm just imagining. They're going to sit in a classroom. They're going to sit on a chair, and they're going to have a table, and then they're going to like do this whole but they'll do the knot sitting at a chair in a table, and they'll be like, "Oh man, I'm sufficient at this." And then they'll go out by the river and go, "Oh, this is kind of a pain in the ass. I don't have the table. Where's my table? Right? Where's my chair? Right?" And then it's like, now this is awkward. And then there's this element. The element is different, right? The circumstance is different. And now I learned something that was in an environment that's not applicable to real life, right? Oh man.
This is why we do our events, Kip, the way that we do them is think about our jiu-jitsu courses. When we do our events,
yeah,
like we don't sit at the barn and pontificate on how to be a jiu-jitsu player
and show like diagrams. Yeah. Right. For you to learn. Yeah.
Like we literally go over to Jocko Fuels in their warehouse and we throw out mats and there's 80 of us and we talk, hey, here's some basic thing. Now go try it, go do it. And they go do it. And then we walk around. You're like, you're getting that right. You're missing this, tweak this, adjust that. And then we do that 5 times or whatever. And then we're like, all right, now you're going to roll 100% live with somebody and you're going to try to implement what we just showed you.
Exactly. And
this is why I hate conferences. No, let me say one other thing first. This is why I hate traditional conferences. Even these like Insta guru conferences, like come to this hotel or this conference center and listen to me yap at you for 4 days. What in the world makes you think that I want to sit at a hotel conference center and listen about how wonderful and how great you are? I don't want to listen to that. And by the way, if you're a public speaker, I'll say this too. Don't ever introduce yourself on stage. Don't do that. All right. That's the MC's job. And it's your job to do a good enough job on your presentation that you don't have to regurgitate how wonderful you are. Don't do that. Number 2, don't yap at people without getting them involved in the process. This is why our events are so much better, because you're not going to sit here and listen to us yap at you for 4 days. We're actually going to go out and do shit. And we're going to learn in real world scenarios.
Perfect. Man, I love it. And one last thought. When you deliver the data is just as critical. So, and this is an example I've used this example so many times and I've gotten good feedback. So I'll share it here. So first time I went surfing, it was actually on my honeymoon, and I'm not comfortable in the water. Like a lot of people don't know about this. I didn't learn how to swim until like middle school, and it was almost high school. And the reason why I learned how to swim, because I wanted to jump off the diving board, and I was tired of my classmates mocking me for being unable to swim. And the way I swam across the pool length to justify jumping off the diving board was to float on my back. That is my learning of. So I am uncomfortable naturally under the water. Like it kind of scares me a little bit. And but I'm on my honeymoon, and Asia's like, let's go surfing. And I'll be honest, I was scared shitless, but I had to like protect my ego. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's surf. I'm thinking I'm going to die. Right. And we show up, and these waves look massive. Like at the time, I remember thinking, I'm going to die on my honeymoon. Like this sucks, right? And I'm super scared and I don't want to tell her because my ego. And we're getting ready. And I was so bad, Ryan, like I didn't even know how to get out into the water, right? Like waves would come in and I'm like trying to paddle out. And she's like, what are you doing? You got to wait until that set's over. You know what I mean? So you can even get out there.
Yes.
I just, there's so much stuff I didn't know. Anyhow, at one point she says, oh, she's like, really quick, I almost forgot. If you ever get disoriented in the water, like you're not sure what's up and down, reach down and grab the leash on your ankle and follow it up to the board. And I'm like, okay. And then I went out, I got eaten alive by a wave and I'm swimming for the surface. And I started getting panicky, like I'm going to drown. And then all of a sudden I remember what she said. Oh yeah, that's right. Grab the leash. So I grabbed the leash, totally took me a different direction. Like up was that way and I was swimming this way, right? Like, and I'm thinking, holy shit, if she didn't tell me that, like, would I have drowned? Like, would I have drowned in this ocean? You know what I mean? If she didn't tell me. This is what we do all the time especially in corporate America. We send out some email about, hey, if you happen to go surfing sometime, remember to do X. And everyone goes, what? Well, I'm not surfing right now. So I'm going to delete that email or I'm going to file that shit away. And when I go surfing in a year, do you think I remember that advice?
No, of course not.
No. And then I lose it. And so how we deliver information or how we act on information is so critical. We talk about this from a book perspective, right? You and I can read some great books, but if we don't immediately go after that book, and I've taken this from you, Ryan, and have some dog ears and go, okay, now that I've read this book, what am I going to do in my personal life based upon what I just read? If I don't do that, I'm not going to remember that shit 6 months from now. I'm not going to remember that a year from now. It was almost a waste of my time if I don't apply it through action almost immediately.
Well, what's better, reading 20 books this year and doing nothing, or reading one book and applying it to its fullest?
Totally.
By the way, I have a book coming out later this year. So that's the one book that you should read this entire year.
All that's required. Yeah.
That's all that's required. You can read a few leading up to it just to prep yourself for what's coming in the fall.
Warm up your reading skills. Yeah.
But I promise this is going to be the only book you're going to need to read. And between that and my previous book, like there's not really much else to read really at this point.
Yeah. That's really why we're here. Do you have a release date yet? Or, I mean, any teaser from that perspective or just?
I think it's the end of September. I don't know for sure. I think it's the end of September is when the book is coming out. And I don't know if I can give the title or whatever. Like people have screenshotted things that they found. Like one guy screenshotted me this morning. He's like, bro, this book looks awesome. And I pull it up and it's my book. And I'm like, wait, where did you even see this? He's like, it's at our local library. Like as a new release coming out in the fall. I'm like, that's crazy. So it's out there. You guys can find it.
Due to the publisher advertising early?
I don't think they're advertising. I think they're talking with public distribution channels. And they have to give them information to see if these distribution channels want to buy it. What I don't know the process.
Yeah.
So I think some of it's kind of leaking out there, which is kind of interesting.
That is interesting. Cool. Yeah. All right. Have we only answered like 3 questions? All right, we'll do better. We'll do quicker.
3 or 4.
Ben Lewis, how do you choose or prioritize your goals and objectives to focus on every 12 weeks as opposed to other things you want? How do you decide to choose one over the other?
I'm lazy by nature, personally. So the way that I choose is what's going to be the easiest thing to do. That's going to yield the biggest result.
I don't know if that's lazy though. Right? I mean, that just seems, minimal effort effective. For biggest result is kind of just logically good idea.
I think it is, so I'll look at, so what I'll do, let's get tactical on this.
Yeah.
Let's take fitness, for example. So I told you, I really need to lock in my diet. I'm trying to lose, weight and that sort of thing. So if my goal is to lose weight, I'm going to write down all the things I could do specifically. I can do CrossFit. I can do jujitsu. I can move from 3 days a week to 5 days a week. I can run. I can walk. I can increase my steps.
Cut out
sugar.
soda.
Yeah. I can stop eating after 7 o'clock. I could do intermittent fasting. I could do keto. I could do this, like 1,000 things, right? Yeah. So what I look at is if I know that my objective is to lose body fat percentage, then is it going to be exercise for me? No, it's not, because I actually exercise quite a bit. I'm talking 5-6 days a week. Excuse me, between jujitsu and CrossFit, a couple days a week. And then we're just an active family. So that's not it. If it's like, for me, it's cutting out sugar. That's the lowest hanging fruit. If I can cut out sugar and processed foods, specifically in the form of bread, chips, that like pastas,
like carbs.
For me, that's not for everybody. And I know people are gonna be like, well, you need carbs. I know. I don't need all the carbs though. And that's
you're
my
like,
challenge.
I'm having all of them. So
right. So the priority for me is, okay, clean that diet up. Like go from this level of carbs to this level of carbs and eat in a certain window so you don't overeat. And look, some of you guys are like, well, intermittent fasting does it. You know why it works for me? Because I overeat at night.
Yeah.
When the kids are in bed and my work is done and I'm chilling, reading a book or watching a show or spending time with my wife, I'm like, get out the chips and salsa, get out the crackers, get out the this, get out the that, let's eat. And so for me, it's not that it works because biologically it's the best thing to do. It may or may not be. That's irrelevant. It works for me because that's when I overeat. So if I cut out that window of eating, yes,
your carb count, because you only have a small window.
Right.
Yeah.
And not just a small window. I cut out, it's not that. I cut out the window where I eat the most.
Oh, I see. The window you give yourself is not when you typically would have a lot of carbs.
That's right.
Your fasting window is when you would typically eat carbs.
So if my eating takes place from, let's say, 11 o'clock to 5:30 or 6, my biggest windows for eating are like 9 o'clock at night. And so if I cut that out, naturally I'm going to eat less, right? Because I don't have time to eat chips and salsa during the day. Like I'm busy, I'm doing work. Sometimes I don't even eat lunch, right?
Yep.
But now if I know my window's here, okay, well, I got to eat lunch and I got to do these things. And then I tend to eat the right food because I'll go down and I'll grill something that, we've shot or we have, whatever. That's just good for me. So the priority is looking at what your biggest challenges are and your distractions and your temptations and eliminating those. And then doing the thing that's going to move the needle the most. It's not working out for me because I already have that on lock. That's not an issue. But again, for me, it's like, don't eat past 7 and cut out the processed sugars. I know if I do that, bro, I'm golden. And that's why that's a priority. Now let's take it in a different context. Let's say it's relationships. So I've got 4 kids. I'm married. I've had a lot of business relationships. I'll look at it and think, all right, Kip, you and our relationship is pretty good. If we don't talk for, 3 or 5 days or whatever, like not the end of the world, no worries. We're going to catch up next week and we'll hit it off right back where we were. Yep. If I don't do that with my wife, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm traveling so much that I'm not home with my kids, that's a problem. So low hanging fruit is not our relationship, Kip, as much as I want to have this relationship. That's not the issue. That's not the biggest point. The biggest point right now is I'm traveling a lot, so I haven't seen my wife. So I really need to make sure I invest in her and do date night once a week because I haven't been doing that. Yeah. Or I've noticed with my kids, at times I tend to pour a lot of energy into one over the other. And so I'll look at it and say, Brecken's got a lot of my attention over the past couple of months. I really need to pour some energy into my daughter. And so she gets a lot of my time and energy and attention, and I focus on her and put that forth to her because that's where it's lacking. So I'm trying to shore up some of those weaknesses. That's how I prioritize anyways.
Steve, good child. Thank you for your time to read my question. You're welcome, by the way. How do you communicate to your spouse that you want to be more successful in your work and business and as a husband and father and leader when your spouse says that they are 100% satisfied with exactly the way things are? I know most people would say, heck, I wish I had that problem. I know I'm blessed beyond belief to have a wife like this. However, I have always been a hard charger and I always want to be the best I can. Now, to my wife's credit, she is content and happy with life that we have built. She is nervous about change and wants life to stay consistent while I want to push my limits and be better. Thanks again.
It's a good question. It's very interesting.
It is a good question.
I don't think, and we've talked about this before, I don't think being satisfied and content with where you are is at odds with wanting to be better and wanting to have more and wanting to do more and impact more people. A lot of the times we talk in these extremes, these dichotomies where it's like, you're either happy with what you have or you need everything. And it's really not that. It's both.
Yeah.
And so here's another thing I would say. When I hear you saying this, what I hear you saying is you want to drive on with your business. That's what I hear. I could be wrong, but I hear that you want to drive on with your business and do more with work, but she's satisfied with the dynamic and the relationship between work and home life.
Sure. Yeah.
And so,
and nervous about, right. And she's nervous about change, which AKA, hey, you're going to change up the status quo. Am I still going to be a priority? Am I taking second string?
Here's why we're not a business podcast, because there's 10,000 business podcasts out there that are going to tell you to work harder, grind, hustle, sacrifice your life and your family and whatever for your business. And I get it. And if that's your idea and that's what you want to do, go find one of those business podcasts and, do your thing. All the power to you. We're not a business podcast. We're a podcast for men. And why I say that is because business, your career pursuits and aspirations are part of who you are. Part of who you are. You're never going to hear me tell you to hustle and grind at the expense of your family. You're never going to hear me tell you that you should hustle and grind at the expense of your own well-being. Now there's bursts. Don't get me wrong. There's bursts.
Seasons. Yeah.
Right. Like I've got the book. I told you that earlier. There's going to be a burst for like 2 to 3 months where I got to go all in on this. My family knows that. And I've communicated that with them, but you need to hustle and grind at home just as much as you do at work. You need to hustle and grind with church just as much as you do with your work aspirations. And if it's not church, then make it something or charitable organizations, contributions, giving back. You need to hustle and grind with your body as much as you do with your finances. Because what men are really good at doing primarily when they are hustling and grinding is career and money. Because it's easy.
Things. Yeah.
It's easy. Like money doesn't talk back to you, right? Money doesn't make you feel guilty for doing it or not doing it. Like money's money. Career's career. We don't take it too personally usually. It's like, just go harder. And we get it. But what about that difficult conversation with your daughter who has her first boyfriend? What about that challenging conversation with your wife where she's like, hey, I don't know if we can do this as a marriage anymore? Or your son who's struggling with being bullied at school.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's struggling with his sexual identity or even his gender, because that's increasingly an issue. That's way harder than, hey, I got to pay off the debt. Yeah. So what do we run away from? Not run towards. What do we run away from? That's really what we're doing. So if work's good and that situation's dialed and locked in and your wife's content, cool. Direct that energy towards something else. Maybe it's starting a charitable organization. Maybe it's getting your kids involved in some aspect of the business. Maybe it's going on that vacation you always should have went on, and start to frame it as hustling, grinding at home. So you feel good about the progress you're making at home relative to what you may have already created in your career pursuits, which I commend you on. Not everybody can say that. You're in that position. So just translate it now.
Yeah. Ryan, what advice would you give him regarding let's say he identifies, hey, you know what? I want to step up my game at work. My wife's nervous about change. What do I need to do to get her bought in to me, doubling down, perhaps not in a way to sacrifice family time, but in a way that she can get on board and see the value of him, putting in not extra time, but hustling maybe more at work.
I think what you need to do is identify how it's going to serve her and the kids. Because I already know how it's going to serve you. So do you. That's why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And you're also saying it'll help the family, which it will. But she doesn't know that. She doesn't get that. And what she thinks of help, especially if you have all the bills paid, and it sounds like you do, you're saying, well, it's going to help the family. How? You're going to pay the bills faster?
Yeah.
Like you're going to
we don't need more money
in other property. Like you tell me specifically how it's going to serve the family. And I don't know what it is. You got to decide that. You got to figure that out. But if you're trying to communicate with your wife about why you should be working more, and again, we're assuming on this question that's what it is, but I think that's right. Then you got to communicate to her how it's going to serve her. Right? So like with my wife, if I'm gone for 3 months and I'm sporadically at home because I'm doing the book tour, then I need to communicate to her how that's going to effectively serve the family. Well, here's a couple of ways. My kids are going to see me pursuing something meaningful. I want them to know what that's like, right? Yep. They're going to see me doing something that's bigger than myself and bigger than them. And I communicate it that way so they get it. They understand.
Yeah.
Right. It also means that when I'm home, because I have a book out, a book is leverage. Like this is leverage. Because what that means is that you and a million other people can buy my book and read about it without me having to actually be present there.
Yeah, it's passive.
So if I take
passive influence. Yeah.
Right. And income.
Yep.
So if I take 3 months and I go do this book tour and I have 500,000 people buy a copy of my book and that turns into revenue and it generates revenue and influence for me, then that means I don't need to be on a podcast all the time. I don't need to be out on tour all the time because people are getting my words and my information while I'm here on Sunday playing footsies with my wife and, playing hoops with my kids.
Yeah.
So think about the way to frame it. You have to be truthful, but think about the way to frame your work in a way that's going to serve her and the kids because that's her priority. And it's yours too, but you guys are coming at it from different perspectives. So if you want to win her over, you can't hope that she's going to see your side of things. You have to see her side and communicate with her in a way where she understands and she gets it.
Great answer. Travis Robinson. I recently interviewed for a team lead position at my company. I've been working closely with my manager to prepare for this role, but in the interview, all they focused on was that I didn't have relationships with other leaders in other departments. I've been feeling frustrated because I didn't even know that I should be doing that since this is my first career type job since graduating college. My question is this: how do I take full ownership of something when it's not clear that it was ever on my responsibility?
All right. This is a college answer, or it's a college question.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't on the syllabus. Sorry. Maybe we'll make sure that we give you all the answers to life before you go out and you get into it. Okay. Now I'm not trying to pick on you, but you said yourself, you're just out of college because you spent the last 12, potentially even 16 years going through course curricula and syllabuses and them telling you what homework you had and what you should be doing all the time with all of your money your time and attention and energy. That ain't life, bro. Like, yeah. Okay, good. You know what? Actually,
it's awesome. They just gave you feedback.
I know.
To grow
Here's
now.
what they could have done.
Yeah.
Here's what they could have done. No, we decided to go with somebody else, but thank you. Period. But you know what they did instead?
Yeah.
They said, hey, we appreciate you applying. It's not right because we see there's a deficiency in the relationship with other managers. And you're asking, what should you do? They told you what to do.
Yeah.
Go build relationships with the other leaders and the other managers in different departments. That's what you have to do. They told you the answer.
Totally.
So go do it.
Travis,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Travis, I think there's a lesson here. And the lesson is Can you take ownership of something that's not on your radar or you don't know about it? And the answer is, of course not. But the minute you know.
No, you can. No, you can. Because it's your job to know what's on the radar.
To figure it out. Yeah, but that's my point. There's going to be parts of life that you're going to have to figure out. And once you figure it out, then you pivot and you grow. That's life. So like, this is not necessarily a bad thing. This is actually a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Something that was not on your radar is now on your radar. So take ownership of it, grow, pivot, adjust, and make sure you take ownership for it.
Here's 100%. Here's what I also would say. Because you're saying, because I don't know what's on my radar. Well, right. None of us know everything that's on the radar. Yeah. So how do you know what you don't know? You ask people who know.
Yep.
So what I would be doing if I was in your position is I would be developing relationships with other departments, because that's what they told you to do. So do that. Excuse me. The next thing I would be doing is I would go right to that person who got the job. Let's say it's you, Kip. I'd go to you and I'd say, hey, Kip, I applied for that position as well, and you got the job. And I just really wanted to congratulate you. I'm really excited. I was excited for myself and I'm disappointed, but I'm excited for you. And I think it's going to be a cool opportunity. And I just want to let you know I'm here to support you. So if there's anything I can do, please let me know. In the meantime, because you got the position and I didn't, is there anything that you feel like you knew that gave you an advantage that you could share with me? Like, come on, man. This is easy, right?
And I think some people would be hesitant, Ryan, because they'd be like, oh, I'm going to be threatening that guy. Listening and putting myself in this scenario, I'm like, I like you, Ryan. Like, I immediately want you to succeed.
Of course. Of course. Now, if you go around your back and I'm like, oh, Kip, that asshole shouldn't have got the job. And he didn't. Screw that. Now you're not playing the game.
Yeah, I'm tripping.
You're playing the game and you're doing it poorly. The other thing I would do is I would go to different departments, because again, this is what they told you to do. And let's say you're a department head in another department, Kip. So a different role play. I'm going to go to you and say, hey, Kip, I'm going to email you first or message you or whatever. Like, hey, do you have 10 minutes? I can sit down. I want to get to know your department and you and what you're doing. And you say yes, hypothetically. And so I sit down and I'm like, hey, thanks for meeting with me. I know your time's valuable. I want to be very efficient and respectful of your time. I applied for the team leadership position last week. Unfortunately, I didn't get it. I wish I would have. I'm disappointed, but I want to make the most of it. And one of the things they said is that I should work on developing relationships with the other department heads. And that's why I wanted to talk with you. And the first question I have for you is, if you were hiring or you were looking for somebody in your department, what would you be looking for? Or what blind spots should people be aware of that are in your department now that they could learn that would help them accelerate their growth?
Yeah.
And you're going to tell me exactly what it is, because you're doing it humbly and you're being honest. Like, hey, I'm disappointed. It's okay to be disappointed. Say that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm really disappointed. I was very frustrated, actually. I was really I thought I was going to get the job and I didn't. That's okay to say. Like, that's the truth. And that makes you more relatable. And now it shows that, oh, instead of wallowing in his own self-pity, he's going around to different department heads and asking what he should do and how he should improve and what these leaders would be looking for. Man, great questions in the scenario are going to lift you leaps and bounds. 100%.
Yeah. And you can't help but just completely respect someone that comes to the table with like, hey, what can I do? What do I need to do to level up here? You know, I mean, that's just so valuable.
There's one other trick. I hate to use that word, even trick, because it's not a trick. It's just strategy or tactic. Strategy is a better word. Is, let's say I ask you as a department head what you would expect to see. And I'm taking notes, like literally take notes, not on your phone, by the way, because if you do it on your phone, sometimes it appears like you're distracted, and an appearance is important. So bring a notepad with you. A nice notepad, not just like a piece of paper. Like, bring a leather binder notepad. And again, the way you play the game is important. This is how you play it. So you bring a nice leather bound notepad and you tell them, hey, I'm just going to take some notes because this is really important to me. Do you mind? No, I don't mind. Okay, cool. And then you ask your question, you take your notes. Now here's the sauce right here. Here's how you do it. 24 hours after I meet with you, Kip, I'm going to write you an email or a message, whatever's appropriate based on your organization. And I'm going to say, Kip, thank you for sitting down with me yesterday. It was very valuable. I learned X, Y, and Z. And then you write 2 or 3 specific things you learned. And if you think of anything else, please let me know. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to periodically just give you a little feedback in how I'm doing, if you're okay with that, because I really would like to maintain this relationship. And then what you do is a week later, you share a very specific story about how you implemented something that Kip, you said, and I write to you and I say, hey, Kip, I just wanted to write it. And you said to me something interesting about going above and beyond for our customers. And what I started doing is I started making follow-up calls to our customers just to ask for feedback. And I actually had a customer reach out to me and say they wanted to replace their order just because I went and asked them about their experience. And I just wanted to tell you, this works. This is awesome. Thank you. So you do that a week later, and then a month or 2 later, you do it again. Right.
Yeah.
So these are some strategies for how you do it.
And I'm just saying, like, the minute I have an opening, I'm calling you without a doubt. And it's not because you're prepped. It's not because you're fully skilled. It's because I know you are capable of learning, that you have a growth mindset and you'll listen to the shit that I tell you and you implement it. The minute you know that from an employee, they are golden. Like, that's the ticket. It's not necessarily, now don't get me wrong, experience is beneficial because you can onboard people quicker, right? But I've hired guys that don't have the experience necessary to start, but they have this. They have the ability to take advice and apply it. And you know that they're eager and hungry and humble enough to listen to your recommendations. Once that exists, possibilities are endless.
I like this kind of stuff because I like the game. So like let me give you a couple more here and then we'll probably call it a day.
I already hired you, man.
Well, I know, but just in case you're an idiot and it takes you a little longer than necessary, let me explain a couple more. Don't call them that, by the way. That's one bit of advice that I would say. No, actually that leads into my next point that I was going to make is you talk really well about other people in other departments.
Yes.
And you defend people. So when so let's say, again, I come talk to you, Kip, as a leader of the other department, and there's an opportunity at lunch with completely separate. And I have a chance to be like, oh, like we're talking about people at work. I'm like, you know who's awesome? Kip Sorensen. Like I went and met with him and he shared some ideas. Like I had no idea how incredible that guy was. That's it. That's all you need to say. Just say good things because that'll come around. Okay. Yeah. The other thing you do is when you have an opportunity to defend people, do it. So let's say you have
opposite. I come to you and I go, oh man, you met with Kip Sorensen last week? Man, that guy rubs me wrong. He's kind of a dick. Don't you think?
So what I would say is I'd say, I hear that. I get that. And I think it's because he's intense.
Yeah.
I think it's because he's so intense about the job and he loves it. But interestingly enough, I went and sat down with him and he had so much incredible information to share with me and ideas and concepts. And I've applied a couple of things and our sales have gone up. Like I hear what you're saying, but man, I've had the opposite experience with him. He's been really, really good to me. Yeah. This is the game. Okay. And then the other thing I was going to say is make sure you're adding value. So again, since we're going on this line here is you're in another department. Maybe I come across a scenario or a situation. We've talked, you've shared some things with me. We're developing a relationship and I come across a situation that I think needs to be brought to your attention. Again, I'm not throwing people under the bus because that's talking negatively. That goes against what I just said. Yep. But maybe there's a missed point or maybe there's a tool that you guys are using in your department that you might be able to introduce. So I would say, hey, Kip, I noticed in one of our team meetings, something got brought up about your department and it seems they were frustrated with something. I used this ABC system for that when I was dealing with this at my past employer, and it seemed to be really helpful. Go check out ABC. I mean, do with it what you will, but I think it might be helpful. Now you're adding value. Now you're putting this on hyperdrive. And then the last thing I would say is, this is a warning. Don't be a brown noser.
Yeah. Oh, people know. Let's be frank. Like
not all people know.
Really? Like,
yeah,
it
not all
seems
people
so
know.
obvious.
It does. But there's a lot, like, you may not totally know. You may think you know. So you just need to look for clues where you might be rubbing somebody the wrong way, or you might be too forward, or you might be interacting too much. Just look for cues and clues and be aware of it, because you don't want to be a brown noser either.
Totally. One thing that came to mind, and I think we fail at this sometimes, and so I just want to add to it, is when you're meeting with those department heads and they're giving you advice, don't add reason, excuse, or your story to it. Just listen to it. Like, I use it as an analogy of, like, take their knowledge and put it on your lap and confirm that you understand, right? That's valuable, right? You explain something to you, Ryan, like, hey, Kip, I see these as potential barriers for you. It's good for me to go, okay, so like this scenario and this is how it would work. Is that what you're talking about? And you're like, yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. I don't go, oh, well, I come across that way because, and I make stories. Do not share stories or excuse away. You discredit the advice that someone's giving you. So just listen, make sure that you thoroughly understand, and then move on. You don't think better about me because I gave you some reason or excuse of why I might show up that way.
There's some phrases that you can use in this context. So if you're giving me that, Kip, and I'm like naturally defensive, here's the phrases you can use is, that's good advice. I haven't been great at that in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. That's one way.
AKA, realize it in the past, you're working on it, but you didn't have to give me some bullshit story about how that's not you anymore.
Right. Yeah, so that's really good advice. I haven't been good at that in the past. Or here's another one. Oh man, that's a really good thought. I hadn't considered that before, but I can see how that would be valuable.
Yeah.
Like, those two phrases alone will help you not get defensive and just learn to accept feedback. And you know what? Even if you have tried it, and even if they're wrong, it doesn't matter. This is the game. Let's say you give me advice and it's like so off the wall, stupid. I'm going to say, hey, thanks for sharing that with me. I hadn't considered that before. Because what am I going to tell you? That's stupid. Like, how's that going to serve me?
Yeah, that's going to help. Yeah.
So I just say, oh, that's interesting. You don't even have to say that's good advice. If it's not, don't lie. But, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't even considered that before. So this is the game we play. It's okay. So true.
Yep. Man, I feel like we could just do a whole ep on just this stuff. Yeah, we really should actually.
Yeah. It's valuable.
All right. Are we up on time?
Yeah, but I gotta say, I'm gonna say something here real quick.
Okay.
You're looking good, Kip. Like, you're honestly,
you're looking this awkward. What do you mean?
It's not awkward. I'm just telling you, like, you're looking lean. You're looking like strong. Have you changed some things?
This past quarter and a half, I've put on roughly about 17, almost 20 pounds of.
Are you serious?
Muscle. Yeah.
See, I'm not making out. I was right.
Yeah.
Like, it's you look good, dude. I'm like, thanks, man. Kip's looking jacked.
Yeah. It's been weird. I've never jiu-jitsu because I used to compete a lot. I've never wanted to get bigger because I didn't want to compete against bigger guys.
So what do you weigh right now?
I'm 195.
Yeah, dude, that's a rough category because you get guys who are fast, but they're just jacked.
Yeah. And most guys that big are a little bit smaller than me. So then they're stronger than me, right? They don't have like bone weight and height on them. But I'm not in this mode of like, I want to compete and become pans or world champion. I'm just like, I just want to bulk up. So I'm just bulking up.
So what are you doing?
So I do, pull, push, and legs 2 times a week. So I'm doing push, pull, legs, and then I run and I repeat. So I'm working every day, working out 6 days a week, weights, and then cardio in between with jiu-jitsu.
So you train, let's outside of jiu-jitsu, you train 6 days a week?
Correct.
with 3 or 4 days of cardio, 2 days of lifting.
Yeah. No,
And then,
I'm lifting 6 days a week.
Oh, you lift 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And then how often do you do cardio? Or is that jujitsu?
That's jujitsu. And then on my break day, I try to like get in some yoga or run, but we got a Ragnar race relay. So now I've started running again. I might be overdoing it. Like today I was thinking about it. I'm like, oh, wait a second. So I worked out this morning. I'll go to jujitsu at noon, and then Asia's going to want to run tonight. I'm like, 3 days a week. I mean, 3 days. I don't
think there is such thing as overdoing it. There's going to be the nutritionist and the fitness guys are going to be like, oh, well, but I think the body just gets accustomed to what it is. So, totally. Okay. So you lift 6 days a week, you get some cardio periodically through those days, and then you train jujitsu 6 days a week.
No, I'm probably training. I've taken a break a little bit because I jacked my glute, but about 3 days a week I'm training 3 days a week jiu-jitsu.
You look good, man. I see it.
Thanks, man. Awesome. I appreciate it.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the key things, the key calls to action are just, I see, man, I was thinking about this. I'm sorry, quick tangent, but I was thinking about, I was reading a book by John Gary Bishop, and he talks about how sometimes our values don't align with things that we take on in life. Does it make sense? Like we'll say that we value these things, and then we'll latch onto a cause like a political party, or we'll latch onto another cause. And those causes, sometimes eventually we lose our values in them. And you go, wait a second, this cause that I'm part of is no longer aligned with my values. And we got to be really careful when we do that. And anyhow, it caused me to contemplate, like, what are the causes that I'm part of? And I consider the Order of Man movement my cause. And what's so powerful about it is we're not out of alignment with our core values ever. And you make sure of that, Ryan, as its founder and as our leader, of like, hey, you're never going to hear something on this podcast, for the most part, at least not intended, that is not in line with what we should be doing as men, whether it's fathers, business owners, coworkers in our communities, or anything. And that's what makes what we're doing here so powerful, because there's not this other aspect of political bullshit or power or control that's manipulating this conversation. There's conversations rooted in providing the best resources possible for us to level up together, to band together, and to show up better in life, and the trickling effect of what that would do. And so I guess my ask is, if you guys are down and you see that, help us move the movement forward. Band with us, whether it's Facebook, in the Facebook group, which is, facebook.com/group/orderman, subscribing to the newsletter, listening to the podcast, hopping on YouTube, sharing those videos, and etc. Man, every single time I turn on the news or I'm watching too much social media, it reiterates how critical the work that is that we're doing. And so I just feel like, man, we just got to level up, and leveling up for us is us, of course, always doing our jobs better, but it's also you guys doing your job better. And that is you leveling up and you sharing this message.
Well said, man. Nothing else to say. It was awesome.
Sorry, just a little soapbox. I just riled up.
No, it's good. And I've always thought, if you have something that's valuable to share with other people, then we have a moral obligation, like literally a moral obligation to share it, to put our best foot forward, and to be that beacon of light for people. Because you may not recognize it. And I ask this occasionally when I do seminars and conversations about whether or not you get to choose if you leave a legacy. And we always have like half and half. Like half the people will say, yes, you always get to choose. And the other half will say, no, you don't get to choose if you leave a legacy. And that's right. You don't get to choose. You are leaving a legacy.
Going to be there regardless. Yeah.
Yes. You get what you do get to choose is what kind of legacy you're going to leave. Yeah. And so if you have something to share, something to put out there, a tool or even a conversation like this, and you have access to it, then the legacy you leave is sharing that information with other people.
Yeah.
Cool.
Love it.
All right, you guys. Appreciate you all. do the Battle Ready course, orderman.com/battle ready. Check out Iron Council, orderman.com/Iron Council. And then we'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.